Today you'll see a super long purple duster cardigan. It's right there, and I've added some really nice fake leather details along with a really cool overlap vent that you can add to anything you want. I'm showing you how to do that. Fun sewing today, keep watching. Hi sewing friends, I'm Karina from liftingpinsandneedles.com. Welcome to this channel that is all about sewing, limitless sewing, and I'm outside today full of crickets. I hope they aren't too loud for you because they're very loud for me. Other than cricket chat, of course, this is a channel about sewing and I have some sewing to show you today. I have been wanting to make the hack that I added to this cardigan for a very long time, very long time. Finally made it come true, and it's purple, a color that I really like. Maybe a little bit less than I like red, but it's pretty much up there, and I'm trying to build purple into my wardrobe. It's different tones of purple and I like the darker tones, not violet. Anyway, what is this pattern? It is the Boyfriend Cardigan from Love Notions. I have made this one before. I've made it once for my niece in a size 8 in a French terry. For her version, I sewed it as per the pattern, nothing different, and I actually followed the instructions from A to Z, and I have a full sew along video that you can see on my channel. It was easier for me to film the little version because it's more on camera, easier to see what I'm doing. And the techniques, the order of events, the style, the seam lines, it's all the same for the women's version. The Boyfriend Cardigan pattern had a whole update and redraft, so it was retested by all the sizes and now includes the full size range from extra small to 5X. And of course you need knit fabrics to make this. This is not a woven design. In my personal preference, I wouldn't use a knit that is super light like rayon spandex. Cotton spandex I don't think would look very nice because you need something that drapes. For me, the best fabrics for a cardigan are actually sweater knits. There is no negative ease in this design, so your knit fabric does have to stretch, but not huge amounts. I think maybe 30% stretch, you'll be fine to be comfortable to move your arms and everything like that. And it's a relaxed fit with a drop shoulder. Full bust is there, the standard bust, and there are things that have been added onto the original pattern, so nothing has been taken away. It's still the same style, same open front cardigan. And in the past you had a short collar option on this band or a hood. Now they've added onto this a regular band, just a narrow band. And actually the one I made last year, I hacked the short collar version in to have a regular band because I didn't have enough width in my fabric to fit the width of the short collar band. So I did that last year as a hack, but actually a regular band now is part of the pattern, so that's really good. Now the length was always at the mid-thigh sort of thing. There are slits on the side, vents that are top stitched, but now they've added a longer version, a duster length version. So that is the one that I've chosen to cut out and print for this time. I wanted to make some changes because the ones I've made previously, I've made pretty much as per the pattern, but you know I like to have fun, and this is when I mostly enjoy sewing, when I have an idea in my head of some detail I want to add, and then I finally make it come true. I've seen this on sweaters, some hoodies, some jackets, this design that has an overlapped seam here on the side. You have buttons. Taking inspiration from there, I always wanted to do that overlap vent, but just on the vents, just down below, way down my legs. So that's my inspiration, nothing to do with what I actually did. I did make some length adjustments. Now the duster length version is not really duster length for me because I'm taller, I measured everything, and if I made the duster length version, for me it would just end up hitting the mid-knee sort of thing. So I wanted mine obviously longer. I really wanted a long duster cardigan to hit around my mid-shin area, sort of like a coat, like a coatigan. I wanted it sleeveless, of course. So I'll put a little diagram so you can see there is an official shorten and lengthen line around the full hip. So I did cut through there. Then at the area where the slit was, I also cut through there. So I added the length in 2 places so that I could make the vent longer. It was my idea to put a few buttons on the top of that vent, so I wanted my slit longer. I added 5 inches on the top, 5 inches on the bottom for an extra 10 inches in length to the duster length. Now had I wanted to make this really long cardigan from the original pattern that hit mid-thigh, then the length adjustments would have been massive. I would have probably needed to add like more than 20 inches. So for me, in my vision that I wanted it extra long, having this duster length version made it much easier to add that length without it being so drastic. There are separate pieces for the thigh length cardigan and the long one. There's just different ease on the hips and everything, so they are separate pattern pieces. you don't just cut one shoulder or things like that. What you'll see in Up Close and So Personal is a little muslin I made from a scrap, how I determined how I wanted this armhole. As I said, the armhole is lower, it is a drop shoulder, it is quite wide, so I really wanted to figure out exactly what I wanted before cutting out my cardigan pattern and modify the pattern piece. I'll show you my layout, the contrast fabric, and then really focus on how to do this overlap vent. You can do this yourself on anything. You can do the same technique on a woven pattern if you want to, and it's really pretty. It gives it something extra, so let's have a look.
Don't you think this is starting to wear me? You've been rated down like hell. I'm weak.
I made a very tiny short little thing. It's basically up to the waist notch on the Boyfriend cardigan, so I've cut the front and the back. You can see there's a center back seam right there. And what I want to see is how I want to modify this armhole for sleeveless. This is where the normal sleeve would be. You can see it is a drop shoulder style. It's meant to be that way. You'll find that the sleeve has a pretty flat sleeve cap. You know, it's meant to be like that. But I want to know exactly how to cut my armhole so it fits really nicely. What I wanted to check if I was going to have a lot of gaping, or if I needed to do a type of dart here or something. But I think I'll be fine. I've pinned in here what I would like right there, considering that my fabric will be raw there and I'll be wrapping around the raw edge with bias tape. So whatever I determined here is the finished width. So it's about 1 inch narrower there, and at the bottom here it's about 3/8 of an inch lower. And then I just follow the shape of my arm basically right there, and I put the pins. I think I'll be happy with that, and I'll just go ahead and transfer this onto my pattern pieces. I'll carry on the same shape for the back armhole as well. It'll still be a nice closed armhole, but not wide, not falling off my arm. I want it to be at my joint. And you can see that this doesn't meet the center. We're missing the band that's going to go there. So once your band is on, I think it will meet the center, although it won't be like a really big cardigan that you can cross over. But it's an open front and it will meet the center once the band is there with the short collar or the regular band. I don't intend to finish this garment. It was just to check this armhole. This is the regular armhole where you would have the sleeve. Now the front and the back have pretty much the same shape. You know, this is not a fitted armhole. It's not fitting right at the shoulder joint. So sometimes you can get away with the front and the back being very, very similar. So what I've marked here, I transferred over there. The way I did this was I just placed it on the top. You can see my front there is on top of my front pattern piece, and I marked right there. It's a little lower, like 3/8 lower, and here inwards about 1 inch narrower. I marked there, and I have all this bulk to get through, so I got a pin and I just went pin, pin, pin. I pinned and made pin marks all along this shape. When I removed this, I had little tiny pin dots there, and then I got my pen and just marked the outline of this new armhole I want to do. So I've written an F and an F there because I'm going to cut this away, cut my cardigan sleeveless, and then I'm going to tape this back together again so that my pattern piece can be whole again in case I want to sew it again with the sleeve. So this will be my new front armhole. This is the back, and I'm just going to place this there, right on the edge, so that I can cut away the same amount I cut on the front. And I'll write a B and a B there so I can put this back together again once I'm done. What you're seeing here is the bottom of the vents of the Boyfriend cardigan. If you're making the thigh length version, your slit will be much shorter, but if you're making the duster length, it will be much longer. Actually, the cardigan I'm making is way longer because I added length around the middle here and above. So it doesn't really matter what length your slit is. What I'm going to show you is going to work on whatever length slit you're making. So basically you have the side seam come here, and then you come out, and the pattern piece originally is on that blue line right there. Up here you'll find a little cross, and that is where you sew up to. You can see that there's a 3/8 seam allowance there on the side seam, and you stop there. and then ignore that green line. This is where your regular slit would be, and you would just press that in and top stitch, and that's how you do your vents the regular way. And I've done that before on my other cardigans. I want to do a different technique similar to what you see on the back of a skirt, like a kick pleat. In my case, I want the front slit to cross over the back one. That's why I need extra seam allowance here. So from the original pattern line there, marked in blue, I have just drawn an extra inch width. You can see I've just extended that by an inch. Dotted line here is where the seam allowance would be. This is where the vent would be folded. So then you have all this excess. You have 2 inches there extra instead of 1. And that's what you need to do the way that I'm going to do it. So very easy. If you want to try this and you like it, just go ahead and add an inch to that. And that's all you need to do. And then the rest is done at the sewing machine after sewing that normally up to there. This fabric is 57 inches wide, so I can fit both pattern pieces there together and use just one length for this long cardigan. I have added a lot of length to the cardigan. I have extra long vents there. As you know, I'm going to be adding an inch to the seam allowance on the vents, and I'll do that directly on the fabric. I didn't modify the pattern pieces. And I have my modified armhole there. Hanging down there, I'll pick that up of course. I have enough to make a pencil skirt for later, so I'm glad I have a little bit left for something else. I'll be doing the band with this matching leather look jersey. It's really nice, and it's actually in the same tone of purple right there. I've been hoarding this for years. So I'm excited to do the band with this and the binding on the sleeveless armholes. I think it's going to look really pretty. Okay, I'm on the ironing board. I have pressed my side seams open. You can see that little bit there, 3/8 seam allowance, and then at the vent it widens. In the original pattern, this would be just an inch wide, so half of what I have there, and then you would have just serged that down and then done your hem. That is the typical way that you do a vent, and of course it would be much shorter than mine because I have lengthened my cardigan a lot. But again, the length doesn't matter. What I'm going to do now, after pressing this open, I've got 2 inches here, 2 inches there of seam allowance. I'm just going to take this edge and press it towards the fold so that I have an inch now of hem allowance, but just pressed double. What I have here dangling is the front. You can see my raw edge there. I still haven't got the band on. This is the front and that is the back. What you're going to do now is bring the fold that's on the back piece and just put it on top of the other one, like that. Up here where your cardigan is being sewn, you know, you have that little bit of seam allowance there. I never want to snip into anything. I'm going to leave it like that. That does not bother me at all. And I'm going to put a pin holding this down. Okay, this is how the vent looks like. This is the back that we're looking at here. And on the back, you would just have a fold of 1 inch there. And the raw edge was serged already, so that's really nice and neat. I will go ahead and top stitch that down to hold it in place. The vent that comes from the front is crossing over it, if you can see, right there. I will also go ahead and top stitch this down. I'm holding the top part here with pins because I'm going to do a diagonal stitch right there through all the layers to hold that down. I have a few wooden buttons that are quite huge and chunky. I wish they were black, but they are very dark brown. My idea here is from that diagonal stitch I'm going to do right there is maybe an inch below that, put a button and just sew it through all the layers. I'm not going to be doing buttonholes. And then maybe 4 inches down, put another button, and then 4 inches down, put another. And then towards the bottom, I will actually have a vent. It will actually open and flow when I walk. This will be all top stitched and all very neat. This is the side of the vent that is on the back piece. So it's just folded in single, just like your normal vent would be. And it's an inch here. And I'll be using an inch of hem allowance. So very simple, you know, I can't help myself. It's just too easy to not do. From the corner, I mark 2 inches. And from this corner, I mark 2 inches. So whatever hem allowance you're using or seam allowance, you just double that. And that's what you mark from the corner. And then you join the dots and you do a diagonal line. Now you fold these right sides together, keeping that point there, matching the lines here on both sides. And that's how the mitered corner comes to be. Works every single time. So it only takes a couple of seconds to measure and to sew this tiny diagonal seam, and then you just snip away the excess, and then you flip it and you have a perfect mitered corner every single time. So this is my hem allowance and the seam allowance from the vent, which is the same, and that's done. Now for the vent that is on the front piece, that is a little bit different, but it can still be done, and I'll show you. For the one that's on the front, this one's going to be double like that, and that would be your hem, but that is extremely bulky, right? So you can still do a mitered corner, just unfold it once, have it folded just once, that inch there, and then just pretend that fold isn't there. Just ignore it, it's not there, pretend it's a raw edge, and then you do the exact same thing from the tip there over there, measure 2 inches, because 2 inches is double 1 inch, which is the hem allowance and the seam allowance of the slit. So measure that, mark it, do the exact same thing, the diagonal line including the fold, but just pretend it's not there. Now I'm actually going to put a pin to hold that there so it doesn't move, but you would do the exact same thing. Get your tip, fold it right sides together, including all that business there. Find that line with the line on the back, make sure they match, and now you would sew the same thing, the same diagonal seam you've been sewing for the regular mitered corner, only it will include all of this layer as well. Just make sure everything's nice and neat. Okay, so this looks really weird. It's sewn including that fold. It doesn't matter. You can now just trim away all this bulk. Get rid of that. And now when you flip it, you have a different mitered corner. It still has the hem allowance that is 1 inch. And here you still have 1 inch there, only it's folded in twice. So this is all folded in and caught in there. And it's going to be very neat and less bulky than if I tried to hem it a different way. So it's very nice. I'm just going to go ahead and hand baste all the hem and all the vents so I can go ahead and top stitch in piece. This is the front piece. This is the one that will overlap the back one. This is the one that's folded double. I've hand basted that down, and here is the back one, the one that's just a single layer and serged on the edge. From where the seam stopped there, I'm going to do a diagonal stitch like that to hold it down. But before I do that, I'm going to top stitch it down. So I've got that pin marking where I'm going to start top stitching. So I want my top stitching to go diagonal there and then to start there. So I don't want to go up further. I think that won't look that nice. So I'll just start there, go all the way down. It's all hand basted. I don't need to worry about pins. I'll just go around there and across to the center front of the hem. I'll do that in one go, and then I'll repeat on the other front. And on the back, because this will be hidden, I can start top stitching from the very top and go down this vent that's just folded in once, and then across the back hem, up the other back. I'm going to be doing this with a twin needle, and here where I start, I'm not going to back stitch or anything. I'll just leave long threads that I can tie off afterwards. I'll be sewing 3/4 of an inch from the edge, and I know this is wider. I'm sure everything's going to be caught in there. Now I can't pivot because I have a twin needle. So I'm just going to lift and move this very carefully and then keep sewing. You can barely see the twin needle. I think the thread just hides into the sweater knit. It looks very nice. So I'll repeat on the other side and then do the back in one go. Okay, top stitching has been done. This is where the seam stops on the side seam, and this is where the back will come behind the front that will cross over. And exactly where that seam finishes, from that point, I'm going to sew a diagonal line just to hold all this in place. So from there to there. There you can see it, holding everything down, making sure that this is crossing over and it's going to stay put. Now here at the back, you are going to have this bulk. If you really wanted to, you could just serge this all together and merge this seam up to there and then press it open from here to there. That's how it's going to look on the inside, together there, up to there, but then you can still press this open. Now it's going to be a bit hard for me to show you all the details here because this is so long. When I hold it here, I look down and it's extremely long. It's a type of fabric I found online in different colors here, and I've used it in the past. And when I saw the purple, I snatched it up right away. There's a little bit of shine and metal material in this fabric, and it's very heavy. But even though it's heavy, it drapes really nicely, and that's what I think is the best for this cardigan. So I love that. And then here is the binding. From the same leather look jersey, I cut in the direction of the greatest stretch. 85% of what I measured here in the circumference, 2 inches tall by the length that I measured. I sewed on the binding right side to right side, and I used a 1/2 inch seam allowance because I wanted the binding to look wide. So that seam allowance I used is what wraps over the raw edge and then comes over to the back. Now the raw edge at the back, I just serged it, and then I used stitch in the ditch so that there's no visible top stitching there. So if you want to do a binding that looks wider, that has a 1/2 inch look of the binding, if you cut it 2 inches tall, it'll work. Sew it at 1/2 inch seam allowance, wrap it around, and at the back you have just enough to catch it when you stitch in the ditch. And that's what I did. I really love it. I really wanted the binding to be seen, and it's very nice. The 85% worked perfectly with this fabric. And now that the band is just the regular band, as I mentioned, you know, you can have a wider one here that folds over like a show collar. I like the look of this one. It's just streamlined and it goes down. There's a slight curve in the neckline, and then this goes all the way down, all the way down. At the back, from the same fake leather, I made a fake belt. So I didn't make belt loops in this case. I used a wooden button that I stitched in here at the waist height on the side seams on both sides, and then it can just hang or be tied at the back for decoration. I thought the back looked just, you know, I needed something there. There is a center seam, as you can see, with shaping. The cardigan has a lot of shape. It goes in at the waist, it goes out at the hips. It's not a boxy design. So you can see that seam there. I've pressed it open. It's 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and it's very neat like that. Now I think I'll hang my cardigan on that chain over there to show you the vent in detail, because I just can't. I try to, like, I just can't. Okay, so I'm on the side here. So this is where the vent starts. Up to here you have a regular 3/8 seam allowance, and then I made the seam allowance be 2 inches wide, and that allows that overlap. And I have 3 buttons there. I ended up placing them closer together than what I thought originally, and that's so I could have more open vent here at the bottom. If I'd done them more separated, I would have basically the whole side seams closed. Okay, thank goodness I'm tall and I was able to hang it even up higher on the chain. I wanted to show you this. So this is where you saw me do the regular mitered corner on the back. See, this is the back there. Regular mitered corner that you would do on anything. But the front one had special bulk because this is double here. So it still worked. You see that you can do a mitered corner with something that's already got one fold. You just pretend it's not there and do the same measurements. And it's very nice on the inside. It looks like that. And it's such a lovely detail, something different. Maybe down the line I'll swap out the buttons if I find buttons that look better, that match this color, or even black. But I had dark brown. That's the only thing I had right now. You can see the band reaches all the way to the bottom. It's very neat like that. And otherwise it's just a really simple cardigan with a little bit extra added, and I'm very happy. This is my extra long boyfriend cardigan. There is a longer version now, that's the length, but for me that would have hit around mid-knee, and I wanted it super long. So from the duster length version in the pattern, I added 10 inches in 2 places around the full hip and in the middle of the vent. I didn't put a belt loop, I just sewed on a wooden button right there to hold that in place. I think it looks super cute. I've got that on both sides, and this just tied at the back for a decoration feature. I really like it. There's a show collar and a hooded band option, and in the past I'd hacked the show collar to be a regular band, but now the regular band is actually in the pattern, so that's what I've done here with this leather look jersey. I think it's really nice. It's got the same tone of purple and finally gave it a use. Also did the binding there. You know, I always like a closed armhole like this. I feel very comfortable like this with all that cover there. Here is a closer look at the binding. It's so pretty with this, and if you see, the tone of purple is very similar, very nice. I wouldn't want to make a whole garment out of this fabric. I just use it for accents, and I'm glad it matched this one. Here's a look very low at how long this is. Hits my chin. I wanted it this long, and the slits are extra long and they overlap with the button detail there. Here's a closer look at the overlap. So the front overlaps to the back, and the 3 buttons there are just decoration. I'm very glad I have a purple sleeveless duster cardigan, and being sleeveless means I can wear it in the winter and in spring and autumn. It can just serve me the whole year. I can just put something long sleeves underneath if it's cold and just have my arms free like that for a day. Like, I had such fun adding all the details that I really wanted to have in this, and that's when I have the most fun sewing. So this project was thoroughly enjoyed. I hope this was fun to watch. I had a lot of fun sewing. These are the projects I mostly enjoy because I just get to put my own spin into things and use the pattern as a base. I know it fits. I love the shape. I've done it before. And now I just wanted it sleeveless and extra long with little details. And it was a blast sewing it. Very, very enjoyable. Remember, the Boyfriend Cardigan for women and the versions for girls is $5 only today, Friday. And then because it's a re-release with a new update and everything, it will have a 25% off for the rest of the weekend through Sunday. It's always much better to get it 60% off than 25% off. And that's a huge discount, but only for today, Friday. So go ahead and get it if you like the style. I will leave my affiliate link down below as always. If you want to purchase from there, I make a little commission from there. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today, and I will see you again very soon. Bye!